Good morning. My name is Nancy Lindborg. I'm the president and CEO here at the U.S. Institute of Peace. And I'm delighted to welcome everybody here for an important discussion on how to protect women's rights in Afghanistan and to build a consensus for peace in a country that has experienced conflict for more than 40 years. We're honored to be partnering today with the Embassy of Afghanistan to host First Lady Ruhollah Ghani, who was last here in 2017. Thank you for joining us again. First Lady, we're delighted to welcome you back. And I'd like to add a special welcome to Ambassador Roya Rahmani, who so ably represents her country. Here's the first woman ambassador from Afghanistan. And Ambassador Rahmani was also just included in the Time 100 Next list. I commend all of you to take a look at that. It's a list of rising stars shaping the future of their fields. Congratulations. It's also my pleasure to welcome our U.S. Institute of Peace new country director who's visiting us from Afghanistan, Ihsan Zia. He's here with us today on his first official visit to Washington. Wonderful timing. And he joins our truly remarkable team here at USIP working on Afghanistan, led by our Vice President Andrew Wilder, who brings to this work not only many, many years of experience, but a lot of heart. So thank you to our whole USIP Afghanistan team. And welcome to everybody who's tuning in online. I encourage all of you to follow the conversation on Twitter at USIP with today's hashtag Afghan Peace. Today's discussion is very, very close to our work and to our hearts here at U.S. Institute of Peace. As many of you know, we were founded 35 years ago by Congress as an independent, nonpartisan national institute charged with the very vital mission of working with partners around the world to prevent and resolve violent conflict. And we have worked with partners across Afghanistan for the past 17 years to build peace both from the top down and from the bottom up. We've helped students take very concrete steps to build peace in their communities. We support partners to improve access to justice and to convene community dialogues that foster grassroots commitment to building peace. We have worked to support the Afghan peace process with the conviction that for peace to be sustainable, it must be inclusive. This past September, we hosted a workshop in Istanbul with senior Afghan women leaders, including some who had joined the first dialogue with the Taliban in Doha. And I was able to meet many of these women in Kabul, where I was just a few weeks ago. And in my conversations with them, as well as with many meetings during my visit with civil society, both provincial and national level government leaders, civil society, tribal leaders, I heard more loudly than in any of my visits over the past 2 decades that across society, Afghanistans are actively calling for peace and working for peace. One woman leader told me that she has never seen a broader political consensus on the need to end the war. Or as a student from the American University of Afghanistan put it, peace is what we are so thirsty for. And not only are they thirsty for it, they are actively working for it at every level of society, from good governance reform to a groundswell of activism springing up at the grassroots. And many of the women I met made it clear that they don't just want to protect the gains that they've made over the last 18 years, they want to expand them. I can think of no one more qualified to lead this important conversation today than the First Lady of Afghanistan. Mrs. Ghani assumed the role of the First Lady of Afghanistan just over 5 years ago, but in that very short time, she has already been a champion for women and all the people of Afghanistan. As we saw in the video, her office worked with women's organizations to survey 15,000 women about their views on peace, a 6-month project that culminated in the Grand Conference of Afghan Women's National Consensus on Peace. And if that weren't impressive enough, she holds 2 master's degrees, one in political science and the other in journalism. And in 2015, Time magazine also recognized her as one of the 100 most influential people around the world. So we're delighted that she could be here with us to share more about her ongoing work with the Afghan Women's National Consensus for Peace and the important role that women in Afghanistan are playing to build peace. After her keynote remarks, we'll have a moderated Q&A with audience questions. And for those watching on the live stream, you're also welcome to tweet your questions again at the hashtag AfghanPeace to have your questions answered as well. So with that, please join me in welcoming the First Lady of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, Her Excellency Ruhollah Ghani.
Thank you, Nancy, for a lovely introduction. It's good to be back at USIP. I've been here, maybe this is my 3rd time or my 4th time, I can't seem to remember. But it is an institution that works for peace. And because of that, it is an institution that I respect tremendously. Peace, the right of people to live in peace all over the world, is a very important right. And I hope that together we'll be able to bring peace to Afghanistan. Also, I want to say that my visit to the States this time has 2 goals. One is that in the media, I hear a lot of despondency that Afghanistan is not doing well, it's about to crumble. This is very bad news for people, soldiers, American soldiers and other soldiers who have given their lives, who have maybe suffered handicaps, brain injuries, PTSD. It's as if you're telling them that their effort was for nothing. And this is not true. I'm here to say that Afghanistan is progressing. Oh, I'm sure there's a lot that still needs to be done. But it is progressing in the right direction. And eventually, it will become a good place to live. And because of that, I want to tell everybody who has sacrificed for Afghanistan that their effort was not in vain. My second message is that the reason I can make this assertion that Afghanistan is on the right way is that there are more and more initiatives on the ground that are Afghan-led, Afghan-owned, in many different sectors, economic sector, financial sector, social sector, legal sector, and yes, in peace, that are progressing in the right way and are making Afghans more and more capable of standing on their own 2 feet. And this is how I consider this experiment that we did, this series of consultation in 34 provinces, the consultation with 15,000 women. That was an Afghan-led, Afghan-owned, not 1 penny from anywhere, our own shoestring budget, and we managed to consult with 15,000 women and to bring together their opinions. And I'm here to let you share with the news, share the news, and share with their opinions, find out what they had said. So I'll start with my quick speech. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, members and affiliates of the U.S. Institute for Peace, distinguished audience, I come to you in peace. Assalamu alaikum. I would like to start by thanking the US Institute for Peace for providing me with a public venue to bear witness on the role of Afghan women in the peace process. I cannot think of any other venue that could be more appropriate. Peace for Afghanistan is a concept that has been brandished by many well-meaning international actors. Ever since President Ghani announced in February 2018 the willingness of the Afghan National Unity Government to enter in negotiations with the Taliban and other insurgent groups, many of our foreign partners joined in the effort with a flurry of activities and initiatives. A recurrent theme was, and still is, the necessity for Afghan women to be part of the process. Many discussions centered on whether women should sit at the negotiating table or whether they should sacrifice their recent achievements for the higher goal of achieving peace. Personally, in my daily interactions with my fellow Afghans, I often heard them yearning for peace and security. I mentioned it in various speeches, and in May 2017, my office organized a 3-day symposium entitled Afghan Women, Messengers of Peace. In other words, achieving peace has always been a concern of mine, and my goal was to routinize social peace as a precursor to political peace. Here, I would like to say, for those who want more details, you can always visit my office website, firstlady, one word, .gov.af. In early August 2018, I was approached by a member of the High Peace Council to organize a 2-hour conference for some 200 women, at the conclusion of which we would declare a consensus of Afghan women on peace. I disagreed with the concept that 200 women hastily gathered for a couple of hours should issue a consensus. But the idea of consulting Afghan women appealed to me. A few days later, with a group of women, members of High Peace Council, civil society, the Ministry of Women's Affairs, and the Ministry of Information and Culture, we sat around the table and discussed how to go about consulting Afghan women about peace. As a trial, we first convened a gathering in Kabul. We had no problem gathering almost 2,000 women from all corners of Kabul and from all walks of life. And we successfully put to the test a framework for consultation, a short introduction, explaining the purpose of the gathering, a 15-minute panel discussion on peace, followed by an open discussion on 3 questions. What is peace for you? What are the obstacles for peace? How can we bring about peace? The open discussion went on for a couple of hours, with some women standing up and stating their opinion, others sending their written statements, and still others writing down their message and having it collected at the end of the session. We did encourage educated women to take dictation from their non-literate sisters, because literacy is a problem in Afghanistan still. Once the open discussion completed, we were joined by some officials, mostly men, and a draft declaration summing up the opinions expressed by the women participants was read and ratified by acclamation. This was on August 15, 2018, so more than a year ago. We were so encouraged by the enthusiasm of the participants that the next day we decided to take our consultation framework to the 33 remaining provinces of Afghanistan. We constituted ourselves into a steering committee. We didn't consider ourselves like managing directors, no, just facilitator to prepare for a grassroots movement. Over the next 5 to 6 months, relying on our own resources, we went to each of the provinces in groups of 7 to 8 people. We listened to what the women had to say and kept a careful record of their opinions. They were eager to talk, and in many instances, they remarked that this was the first time anyone had asked for their opinion. The remarks were pertinent and revealed a depth and breadth we were not expecting to find in far-flung areas. So again, if you go to the website of my office, you'll find all the details under Afghan Women for Peace. And you can download a PDF record of all the declaration and statement issued in each of the provinces. So if you have detailed question as to what the women said, how it differed from one province to the other, you'll have to do your own homework. Once the provincial events completed, the steering committee, now counting 21 members, that was the last picture in the video, set up to organize a national gathering of around 3,000 women, which took place on February 28, 2019, in the Loy Jirga Hall in Kabul. The 7-minute video you watched at the beginning of today's talk is a quick summary of the 4-hour event. Longer videos can be found at the office website again. It is worth noting that the day before the final event was dedicated to finalizing the text of a national declaration, a summing up of all the statements collected at the conclusion of each provincial consultation. The discussion involved 700 provincial delegates as well as 100 Kabul delegates. They discussed article by article, bringing amendments here and there, and even adding one article. They then apposed their signature on 3 white sheets that were then hung on the balcony of the Loy Jirga Hall the next day. Thus, the official national declaration represents the consensus of the 15,000 women from all over Afghanistan that were consulted during that 6 months process. In Dari, we refer to it as Ijma' Milli. As you well know, all of you, re-establishing peace in a post-conflict country is a long process. And the Ijma' Milli is only one step among many on the road to peace. Still, it is an important step. 1. The consultation indicated that Afghan women, no matter where they live, are well aware of the need for peace. There is a national consensus that we need peace. We've had enough of conflict and war. The open discussion process encouraged them to speak up and to realize that they're not alone in their opinions and that they can already reach an agreement among themselves. It also helped them identify what role they can play in their own environment to facilitate conflict resolution and mediation. 2. Having taken part in the Ijma' Milli, some of the women have become more outspoken in discussing peace and in identifying what may be their red lines. Quite a few of them have taken part in TV roundtables and have expressed their opinion with clarity and firmness. Some of them even sat at the same table as Taliban spokesmen. Yes, we have freedom of speech in Afghanistan, and we have Taliban coming to the roundtables in TV. And when they were able to engage them and rebut their misogynist statements. 3. In the National Consultative Peace Loy Jirga that took place on April 29, 2019, and that was a jirga that was organized by the government and had elected participants from all over the country. 30% of the participants were women, of which 100 had taken part in the Ijma' Milli. The participants were distributed over 50 committees. 13 of these committees elected women as their chairperson, and 26 chose a woman as their secretary. The head of the Lojirga had 5 deputies, 2 of which were women. 5 deputies, and then 5 secretaries, where again 2 of which were women, and the 1 spokesperson was a woman. So women have earned their space among Afghan society. 4, the Doha talks started in March 2019 and were shrouded in secrecy. It is a well-known fact that Afghan women were among the most vociferous voices demanding to be part of the talks. Eventually, through German efforts, a 60-member Afghan delegation, 9 of whom were women, met for 2 days with the Doha Taliban team. It was an opportunity for both sides to take the measure of each other. One of the most revealing instances happened when a Talib member decided to quote a verse from the Quran. He was immediately faced by several Afghan Islamic ulama quoting competing verses. 2 of these ulama were women. These few examples show that Afghan women have forged their space in the national process for peace. And at this point, I would like to listen to your comments and questions. Thank you. Okay, sorry, I'm slow. You want me to sit down? Yes.
Thank you so much again for joining us and for bringing your experiences and your observations to share with us, particularly your opening observations. I think those are heartening and important to hear. And so I'd like to start really with a very basic question, and that is you've talked about, and others have as well, about the remarkable gains that we can't lose sight of. The way that women have made these important gains over the past 18 years. How do you characterize those gains? Where and how do you think women have made the most important gains as you look at the landscape of Afghanistan?
Okay. Well, thank you for having me, and I'm sorry my scarf keeps falling. This is the story of my life. Anyway, women are now visible in Afghanistan. That maybe is the most important observation I can make. And they are in all spaces. They are in some government spaces. You know that we have quite a few deputy ministers. At one point we had 15 of them out of 24 ministries. We have women judges, women prosecutors, women legal defenders. We have, of course, lots of women that are teachers. We have women doctors. So basically, we are progressing to a point where women will be fully engaged in society. Of course, there is still a little bit of a difference between provinces and urban areas, but even there, the difference is getting smaller. People are moving a lot. They're coming to the urban centers, and people from urban centers are going to the rural areas. And there are initiatives like the Ijma Milli that you saw, that has gone to all the provinces and have connected with these women. And I think the most important thing is that women are gaining respect. And I think that's very important. Thank you.
And as I mentioned in my comments during my recent visit, I was really struck by both this full-throated cry for peace, demand for peace, but also a request that we not talk about preserving the gains that women have made, but rather we need to continue to advance the gains. So you've just identified a number of areas in which there have been important gains and progress. What's next? What do you see as, if we focus on advancing the gains, what does that look like?
What Afghan women need is more professional training. They now have the courage to be out in the public spheres. They have the courage to speak up. They need to be trained in specific skills so that they can earn the respect of other people around them because they are good at what they're doing, not just because they're women. I think really we have reached the point where we need to put the emphasis on providing opportunities for women to refine their skills. And it's from everything. It encompasses the fact that we still have very many women that are illiterate and they need to learn how to read and write, to the point that some women who have MAs or even PhDs have no idea how to manage an office. And so they need to learn the skills of, how to conduct meetings, how to call for a consensus, how to make reports, things of the sort, so that their influence is really very hard-hitting and that they really get results.
So you've given us a wonderful view of this process you've been very involved with on the Afghan Women's National Consensus for Peace. All 34 provinces participated. And you just mentioned that you think the rural-urban differences are narrowing. But did you see differences based on the North and the South, or the degree of continued instability that is in some versus other of the provinces? What was the variance of views that you heard during that process?
There definitely were some differences from province to province, but it was remarkable how the main goals were all the same. We need peace. There is one thing that they say, one saying is that if we don't have peace, we may be alive, but we don't have a life. They want life. They want to be able to have a good life with their families, be able to provide their children with opportunities to grow, to become somebody. Also, they want to be in an environment that is a pleasant environment, not an environment where every morning we wonder, is there going to be a bomb on the road while I'm going to work or to school? It's just common sense. It's not different. But we had some differences. For example, some of the provinces that are in the center, like Bamyan and Daikundi, when you ask them, what is peace for you? For them, it was more development, more opportunities for development, because they are relatively peaceful. But in other areas where a lot of the families have their sons involved either in the government army or with the Taliban, they say, we are tired of seeing the coffins come every day with our sons in them. So the priorities are slightly different, but the overall idea that we want peace, everybody wants peace. Everybody wants to come out of this situation that is really oppressive and to be able to live a normal life.
I want to build on that a little bit, because we were talking earlier and you made the comment, which really resonates with what I heard when I was there recently, which is people sometimes have something different in mind when they say they want peace. You know, what does peace mean? Is it just the absence of conflict, or is it something more? And do you think that this national dialogue this national consensus process, helped people arrive at a more common definition of peace? And is that shared more broadly across the Afghan population? I mean, this is really a core issue about what do we mean when we think of peace?
So yes, indeed, at first, even myself, when I would say I want peace, for me it was the absence of war, okay? But fortunately, and Ijma Milli was just one initiative that encouraged discussion on peace. We've had a lot of discussions in the past few months, almost a year. Peace has become a topic that everybody discusses. Every week, one embassy or the other would have a program about peace and women and what should we do. Civil society and NGOs would have programs also, conferences. What is the role of women in peace? There would be, if ever something happened that annoyed the women, they would gather and they would have big discussions. What should we do? What kind of declaration should we write? This has been ongoing maybe now for, I don't know, 10, 11 months. And it's unbelievable how refined the discussion has become. Because each time you dig a little deeper, and you find out, what does peace really mean to you? What is peace for you? And what are the impediments to peace? And what are the protectors of peace? And one thing for that last point, what protects the rights of people to live in peace? Afghan people, women and men, have slowly started reading their constitution and have found out that the Constitution is an official document that protects their rights, that protects their access to education, to health, to legal services, that protects the free economy. It was really very interesting to see businessmen and merchants saying, oh, no, we have to hang on to this Constitution because it states that it's a free market economy. We don't want to go back to planned economy. So the Afghans have realized that they have something that protects them. Before, very few had read it. I had skimmed through it. I had gone to certain articles I knew were important. But once you sit down and read it, you find out you have that. And they've become very protective of their constitution. So you'll often find people saying in shorthand, our red line is the Constitution. And you think it's just an empty slogan. But no, it is the result of months of discussion, months of saying, well, what happens if, and what happens if this happens and if that happens. So it's really all these months of uncertainty and not knowing how the peace process is going to evolve, have allowed the Afghans to have a much better idea of what their demands are.
Which is encouraging.
Very much so.
Do you get a sense that in addition to the national consensus that you've been working with for women, is there something similar happening for the broader population? Should there be? Maybe.
I think it was very clear for women that if they didn't have the Constitution to protect their rights, there was no other document or institution that will stand for them. So very early on, you have heard about women standing up, talking. Even those who went to Moscow were very outspoken. They give interviews on international outlets like the BBC, CNN, and they say, we're worried and we're not about to let go of what we have achieved and what we can still achieve further. So, yes, women have been a little more
Ahead.
more quick to react and more vociferous, because they had they felt maybe that they had more to lose. It's only gradually that the men came to realize that actually they had also things to lose by saying, okay, we can do with the constitution, we can have another constitution.
So President Ghani recently released his 7-point peace plan. How do you see this national consensus dialogue fitting into that?
You're going to laugh, but I don't follow exactly what my husband does because he's very, very busy. And I have to confess that I have not yet read the 7-point peace plan, okay? I'm sure it's great, and I fully condone it. But I think peace is going to be a very long process. Whoever thinks that peace is just around the corner is going to happen in 1 month. If ever we have that kind of peace, it will be just a piece of paper that in 2-3 months will be discarded and we will be back fighting each other. So it's not that I will not read the peace, the 7-point peace, but I don't sit on the negotiation. I don't know who's discussing what with whom. And, but basically, I meet people, I talk with people, and I discuss with them. And I've always felt the need to give them the feeling that they themselves also can do peace. They don't have to wait for negotiations to happen or not. We can start in our families, we can start in our villages, in our neighborhoods. We can start by the way we educate our children. We can start by our attitude towards early marriage. You know, early marriage is often the source of conflicts down the road because early marriage are not often successful. And it creates rifts between two families, two extended families, and that rift can immediately turn into something bigger, and then you forget what the reason was, and you're at war. There are a lot of things that people have realized that they need to change their modus operandi, how they interact with each other. And that is, I think, that is the role of my office, is to help people get out from the mentality of violence that 4 decades of war have ingrained in our society and come back to a more natural society where we have disagreement, but we have ways of resolving this disagreement in a more peaceful way.
You know, thank you for underscoring that, because that's such an important part of really building a sustained peace. And that's that bottom-up part that doesn't come from elite peace processes or diplomats speaking at the table. I was really struck in my visit and conversations, particularly with students, at their coming to that realization that they had a role to play in their daily lives. And I think this is such an important point to underscore. Can you say just a little more about why, in the context of Afghanistan, this is such an important piece of the longer-term peace puzzle, of people taking responsibility in families, communities, to do things more peacefully?
In 2018, my office organized a symposium on responsible citizenship. And I love my job because I keep discovering things, I keep learning new things. And I discovered, when you think about the history of Afghanistan, let's say from King Amanullah till today, we've had monarchs, we've had a republic of a cousin of the king, we've had a succession of party dictatorship. There were 3, 4 of them, 5, I don't know. And then we've had the Mujahideens that didn't have a regime really, but were kind of autocratic. And then we have the theocracy of the Taliban. In all these regimes, people were treated as subjects. That means the top decides, and whether you like it or not, you have to agree, you have to go by the rules that they have decided. What is different now, since 2001, but especially since the Constitution, which was adopted in 2004, what is different now is now we have a regime that affords every citizen, every person, every Afghan to be a citizen. They have rights, they have obligations. And it is a long process, again, there to learn what it means to be a citizen. And this is why we were doing that symposium about responsible citizenship. But I think people have realized that this is a regime that allows them to speak up. Freedom of speech is a reality in Afghanistan. And it allows them to voice their concerns, to voice their beliefs. We have lots of discussion going on in social medias, on TV programs. There are all sorts of ideas that are going back and forth and all that. But also, they are also realizing that they have a role to play. They have responsibilities. And I think the young people are the ones that are grasping the most. And I'm not surprised that a university student would tell you, I really know now that I have to do my bit so that peace comes to Afghanistan.
And just one more question, and then I'm going to go to the audience, so be ready and we'll have mic runners. But, you know, this is the year of people power around the globe, as we've seen, where, you know, from Khartoum to Venezuela, Algeria, and we have seen the People's Peace Movement, those very courageous marchers who went from Helmand to Kabul and have met with Taliban in all their communities and said, you know, we really need to stop being violent with you.
And that was a movement that was started by women. Yes, it was a woman who had lost all her sons, 4 sons, in one event. It was a sport event where the Taliban had put a bomb, and she lost her children. And she said she was adamant she was going to go and throw her chadar at the Taliban, which is a kind of sign of defiance, and asking them to apologize. They refused. So she set up a tent in the middle. I think it was Kandahar or Lashkargah. I don't remember. It's Kandahar. Lashkargah? I don't know. Anyway, it was one of these traditional provinces. She set up a tent. She was soon visited by a lot of women, but also a lot of men. And eventually they decided a walk to Kabul, and there not many women took part in the walk because, for obvious reasons, they have families and children to tend to, and they cannot take off for a 100-day journey. And also, it's not an easy trek. But it was a woman started.
And I understand it's continuing. It's taking root in other of the provinces.
Yes. It's a people's movement. It's a people's movement.
Let me go to the audience, and let's start with this woman right here with the yellow. And then we'll go right here. Yeah, please go ahead, and please identify yourself.
Good morning. My name is Najibat Salam. I'm with Voice of America Afghan Service. Ms. Ghani, thank you so much for taking my question. And I do appreciate what you're doing for the Afghan women of your country. My question is regarding peace talks. Of course, peace talks between Taliban and Afghan government, if it happens. As you know, that women of Afghanistan are concerned. They want to have an active role in the peace talks. They want their voices to be heard. They want to raise their concern. And if the peace comes, they want to know to what cost. Would they lose their rights? Would they lose their accomplishments? So the delegation, the question is the delegation that is chosen to talk to them, if it happens again. Are you aware of it as a First Lady, that whether there are women there, that they can have actual role, active role, not a symbolic role? are you concerned? Do you share their concern? Are you aware that are there women in that delegation? If they are, how satisfied are you with them?
So
Thank you.
We'll take a few questions to get a couple out here. So over here.
Good morning, Mrs. Ghani. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Madison Skachia, and I'm a graduate student at the National Defense University here in DC. I also spent last year in Afghanistan, and so I just marked my one-year return home last week. And so I'm actually writing my master's thesis on the role of women in peace building. And so I've been doing a lot of my studies in Afghanistan. I was a logistics advisor, so I actually worked with supplying the women's police forces with everything when I was there. So my question for you is, in my studies, I've been reading a lot about the, I was going to try to say it to you in Dari, but I'm a little nervous in front of all of these people. So the Revolutionary Association of the Women in Afghanistan. And I've been doing a lot of reading. Cheryl Bernard wrote a really interesting book about them. And I'm very curious as if this peace initiative that's women-led and women-organized, this grassroots movement, is incorporating any of the organizations, the feminist organizations that were functioning kind of during the Taliban. So just curious to hear about your thoughts on that. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, we'll take one more right here in the aisle.
Welcome to DC. My name is Fatima, and I'm a graduate student part-time at Marymount, and as well I work for the government at FDIC. I raised in Afghanistan, and during the war, I went to Iran, so I have like mixed culture in me. So while I was raised, you were talking about peace. What does peace mean to you? I just want to say peace means to me, as an Afghan woman, to remain silent. Don't say anything. Don't raise your voice. If something happened to you, just forget and forgive, because that's peace. As an Afghan woman, I raised with this mentality. So what is the most specific program, a peace program to change this culture in Afghanistan, which is wrong? And people, a mother tell the child, a daughter, that remain silent. You were raped. You been raped by your father, but remain silent. That's peace for you. And a son was raped by a man on outside. It's a peace to just remain silent. So how you change the culture, and as well, like at the mosque, Mullah, the leader of the religious leader, says, "You, a man, allowed to have 5 or 4 women marriage." It's a transferring of disease. What is the program to change this culture, to change wrong interpretation of religion to people? Thank you.
I might start by answering this last question. Is that it sounds to me like a visit to Afghanistan for you in the near future is very important, so that you can see for yourself how much it has changed. It's a change of mentality, and maybe it is more present among the young people of your generation. But I think, and there might be still some families that are still going by the norms that you have mentioned, but it's becoming challenged day after day. And it's the process of doing without these habits that are not human has already started and is underway. So I hope eventually we will not have these things anymore. For Voice of America, your question was about the role of women in peace, basically, and whether the women are going to lose their rights or not. Is that what was your question? Yeah. As I said in my presentation, women have woken up, and women are no longer afraid to speak up. And I think that they have reached a point where nobody can now disregard their importance and their presence. Whether or not they are at the table, my understanding, again, I'm telling you, I don't really know exactly what the government is doing, but now we have a Ministry for Peace. And I was asked to, if ever I knew of women that were good for negotiation. So they are looking for women who would be good at interacting with the other party and be able to talk in the name of all the women. One of the reasons of the Ijma Milli was to get a document that had been discussed throughout Afghanistan by the women of Afghanistan, and to see what those women have said. Because whoever you are sitting at the negotiating table and you have that document. You are bound by that document to follow the prescriptions of that document. So nothing is perfect in life. I'm not quite sure how it's going to happen. It's still not clear, the process of peace, how it's going to evolve. I definitely agree with you that the peace has to be an Afghan peace, Afghan process, Afghan-owned, Afghan-led. There's now this new term, intra-Afghan, which means nothing. It is Afghan-owned, Afghan-led, but they don't want to use Afghan-owned, Afghan-led. Okay, that's fine. It's just a word. But I know that the government is very serious about reaching peace. But as I said earlier, peace is going to take a long time and a lot of preparation. And Ijma Milli is one of the kind of preparation we have. Because now we have groups of women in all the provinces that feel that they have had their say and that they can continue to have their say. And I'm sure that in their own environment, they are taking decisions, they are arguing, they are pushing for things that will bring more peace in their society. For the lady who was asking me about Rawa, by the time I became First Lady, which was like 5 years ago, nobody came to me and said, I'm Rawa. Okay? So I cannot give you an estimate of whether they are still active or not. I have not read their publications, if they had publications. I know that they were very active maybe 20 years ago. But if you really are doing a research on peace, then I will again recommend for you to look up my office's website, where you have all the details of what the women said in each province. So at least you have some raw data you can really work with. You're welcome.
We'll look for the citations in her thesis. Okay, we'll try to get in the middle here. We have a very eager young woman right in the middle, and then the gentleman behind her. We got to give the men a chance as well, but go ahead.
My name is Pazma Ekbarzai from Afghanistan. First of all, please allow me to take this platform to thank and appreciate for the iconic agency of our amazing First Lady representing women from Afghanistan, following Queen Suraiha. Secondly, Afghanistan is at the political juncture of uncertainty, approaching either towards conspicuous gains or inevitable loss. taking the behavior of state persons and the general will of Afghan people into account, sooner or later, the peace accord is ineluctable. Now, my question is, how do you define a substantive commitment to protect and maintain the boundaries or red lines, ensuring security, equal inclusion, and active participation of women in public spheres of life in post-peace accord era? If you please elaborate, if there is a structured set of mechanism on how to prevent any social or political recalcitrant force from bargaining on any issue curtailing rights and liberties of women in Afghanistan. Thank you.
Thank you. And just pass right behind you, the gentleman right behind. Oh, I thought, oh, okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming and answering the audience question. My name is Mohammed Rafi Sina. I have a short question. When President Ghani made a decision to release Anas Haqqani, one of the leaders of Haqqani network, as a woman and as the First Lady of Afghanistan, what was your reaction to his decision? And I'm so glad that Anas Haqqani and his colleagues are back to Bagram prison, according to Tolo News. So what was your reaction? And last question, are you scheduled to have a meeting with the U.S. First Lady, Melania Trump?
Okay, we'll take one more question over here in the red. Yep.
Thank you, First Lady Ghani. It's nice to see you. My name is Mary Matash. I'm an Afghan-American attorney doing rule of law projects between U.S. and Afghanistan. I actually spent the last 2 months out of 6 months in Afghanistan, and I did a piece called Leading the Way, and I interviewed women leaders from security, economic, political sectors, and there was 2 things that they said that were interesting for me, and I'd like your feedback. One was that many said that they felt the peace deal had already been made behind the scenes, and they were going to do their best to find out what the best outcome is that they could achieve. And the second was that they were mentioning this delegation of women that were appointed by the Taliban to be part of the peace talks. And I had not heard about that on the international news, and I wanted to see what your thoughts were if there is this delegation that were actually part of the Taliban side. And their concern was, how would the Taliban interpret these laws? As you know, Article 22 of the Constitution says that there is to be no discrimination between men and women, but the key was, how are the Taliban going to interpret the laws? They felt the Taliban was reformed, like there was a Taliban 2.0 out there, and they were going to interpret these laws differently. And I don't know, in these discussions that have been had in this consultative process, whether you have received that type of feedback. And if anyone's interested in watching the video, you can go on YouTube, Afghan Women Leading the Way. I think it's the second video that comes up, and listen to what they had to say. So I'd like your feedback on these 2 issues. Thank you.
Again, here, I'll start with the last question because it's fresh in my mind. So, Mariam John, are you assuming, I mean, the way you're presenting the thing and the way the answers were, it was almost like an assumption that the Taliban were going to come back and rule Afghanistan. Are you sure? I know, but are they sure? Why are they saying that? As long as my husband is there, as long as I am there, we want peace with the Taliban because they are Afghans, and as Afghans, they have the right to be in Afghanistan, and this is why they are there already, okay? But how many are they? I don't know. Outside Afghanistan, they might be, I don't know, 20,000, 40,000. Inside, maybe there are some families, but we're not talking about such a large number. And we are a country of 36 million people. So if they want a regime that is totally against the regime that we are having, which is a theocracy, they want a theocracy. And in a theocracy where nobody can argue what they're saying, because theocracies are the worst because they are religious beliefs. And when you believe in something, there is no room for negotiation. There is no room for saying, okay, maybe we'll concede this or we concede that. So I personally, from where I'm sitting and from where I'm seeing what the government is doing, I don't see a peace that ends up with in Emirates of Afghanistan. And I think this is very clear to a lot of people. We want the Taliban to feel comfortable living in Afghanistan, but we don't want them to come and impose their beliefs on us. We are already a Muslim country from several centuries. We have already interpreted the Quran, and the first part of the Quran, Iqra, shows that everybody has to read the Quran and understanding the way he understands it. So they're entitled to their opinion, but they're not entitled to come and force it on us. So I would say that these women were not really, yes, there is this worry among women, but it's not, it should not be encouraged. It's not going to happen, at least not under my watch. Okay, the young lady in the middle. So your question was about, what was it again? Oh, yes. You're almost asking me to do the negotiation in 2 minutes. That's what a negotiating team should do. And I'm sure that they will look into that. I have no idea. I have not studied mediation. I've not done negotiations. I don't know, but definitely it is a demand that should be met. So I hope you keep on asking about it. And
you will commend them to the document that came out of the national consensus.
Yes, yes, you have the declaration. I think we are distributing it here. So, and it is, again, on my website. There was a third question. Who was it? Yes. And it was, about, well, this was a negotiation between I don't know if it's the American university or it's the American government. Again, I don't get the details of those. My husband does not come and tell me everything he does. So, and I was not in Kabul when this happened. So there have been these two professors, one American, one Australian, that work at UAF, that were kidnapped in 2016. And it seemed that there was an opportunity of negotiating their release against the release of the 3 Taliban, one of them being the Haqqani brother. I don't like to second guess the government. The situation is very complex and it's not as simple as that. And as you mentioned, it did not work. I'm not quite sure why, but probably some party did not do what they promised that they were going to do. And so unfortunately, the 2 professors might not be released. But this is what we are dealing with. This is the kind of people we have to negotiate with. And it is really delicate, it's subtle. And this is why I think every one of us should really discuss and think through so that we are all on the same page and we can talk with one voice. With one voice, we are much stronger than if ever once somebody says, oh, we should do that, and somebody else says, no, we should do that. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for one last round. We'll go to the plaid scarf right there. If we could get a mic over.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Samaya Karam. I am a student, a master's student at American University. This question particularly focuses on the broader range of it. I know there is initiative being taken in Afghanistan about women, but what can the international community, particularly the US and the institutions here in DC, can do to help keep going with that change and with the national consensus?
So how can the international help this young man right there?
Thank you so much, and welcome to the U.S. First Lady. My name is Mansoor Ahmad Mansoor, and I'm originally from eastern part of Afghanistan. And thanks again for the comprehensive presentation. I have a very simple question, and my question is, speaking of communities' engagement and Afghan women's engagement in the peace process, do you think there is a need and a way for these Afghan women to go and, through the support of Afghan government, of course, to go and talk with the Taliban's families and see this peace process from a different angle, how the Taliban families are thinking and how they can influence the process in Afghanistan? Thank you.
Interesting question. And let's see, anyone from the back? Okay, so with this one here? Yeah, okay, this gentleman right there.
Questions.
Thank you so much. In the last point, I find the chance to ask you, Ms. Rola Ghani. I'm Wahid from Voice of America. There are a couple of questions, but just directly go to the piece, and you didn't talk about the election, which is going to be changed, and a big concern, again, like it was in 2014. What is your concern about the election results, and what is your red line on the peace talks with the Taliban?
Okay, where is the first one? Was a person, and what was the question again? What can you do for the Afghan women? Okay. Are you listening? I see you're bending. Okay. Your question is, how can you help Afghan women? As I said earlier, the best help you can give Afghan women is to help them get more professional and more skilled. Really, that's the best thing you can do. And you train one person. I mean, look, our ambassador, she's just one person, and look at all the work she's doing, okay? So you train well, a few per people, and then they can have a great effect. So I think it's really, let's put the emphasis on training and skill learning, and real transfer of real knowledge, not just, thing. It's funny that you should talk about interacting with families of Taliban. And this is why I'm very hopeful of some provinces being able to arrive to a more peaceful environment, because women can talk to other women. And it has been one of the things that these women in the consultation have mentioned. And in some of the provinces, we were told, there are going to be women, Taliban women in the audience. And we said, sure, Afghan women are Afghan women. Let them say what they want. And they were not very different. They are mothers, and they have the same problem seeing the corpse of their son come back in a coffin. They are mothers who have children. They want them to get educated. They want them to get education. They have household. They have to, probably there are problems of water, problem of transportation, whatever. There are a lot of problems that they share. And I remember at one point, it was, I think, at one of the Eids, somebody came up with the idea, let's have another ceasefire. And they came and they said, okay, let's talk to the women that had come and see what they say. And their reaction? Their reaction was, we are already in contact, and we are already making some kind of truce for the time of the Eid. But we don't want it to be publicized. We are doing our work. Keep us, leave us alone. We know what we are doing. It's really a grassroots thing. And I agree with you. This is the way we might be able to get somewhere. And the third question, yes, it was about elections and about red line. I'm like you. I thought today we would know what the elections results were. I'm still waiting, and I don't know. And again, it becomes a political problem, and I'm steering away of politics. I'm the first lady for all of Afghanistan and all the Afghan women. I'm not the first lady for people who vote for me. I'm first lady for everyone. The second one are the red lines. It's not my red lines. You will see them in the declaration. But basically, it's the red lines that the women have come to. And this is why you hear them say, we don't want our constitution to be changed. We don't want the regime to be changed. And here, it's really an interesting distinction you have to make between the word regime, nizam, and government, hukumat. The government come and go. Some stay 1 term, some stay 2 terms, whatever. But the regime, it's the regime that the people are realizing. It's a regime that is new to Afghanistan, and they're realizing that they like that regime. They like the fact that they can be entrepreneurs and kind of start their own business. They like the fact that they have enshrined in the constitution access to education, to health, to legal services. They like what they see. So basically, these are the 2 things that come to mind when you speak about red lines. Okay? Thank you.
In our closing minutes, I want to ask you one final question. And, you know, we often see, particularly in the media, a narrative of destruction and of conflict in Afghanistan. And there is a deeper story of resilience, of hope, of strength. You talk to a lot of people. You've mentioned that you listen, you hear stories from all across Afghanistan. So I want to ask you to close us out with a story that has given you a great deal of hope, that really personifies that deeper resilience.
When I first started, opened the doors of the office, I used to get a lot of delegations from all the provinces. And their main concern was, you have forgotten us. All the services are in Kabul or in other big cities. In the provinces, we're not getting anything. In Dari, it was always the same expression, Mara faramush kadin. Okay. I don't hear that anymore. I really don't hear that anymore. It is maybe because more and more, when there are big events in Kabul, people now try to include Afghans from the provinces, women and other. Because a lot of trainings, government trainings, bring government employees from the provinces to Kabul. Because young people are much more mobile and do come to Kabul. What I feel is that there is no longer this us and them. There's no longer this kind of thing that, oh, the people of Kabul, they're something else. No. There is the sense that there is a way for achievement. I feel that people now have a sense of hope. Young people now know that if they work hard and they become specialists in one field, they will be considered for high posts, or they will have the opportunity of having a business, of being able to earn their living comfortably. People are no longer thinking, oh, this is a terrible country, I need to get out of here. You have less and less people wanting to leave Afghanistan. I feel that the story that I like the most is that, of course, you know that if ever you work for an American institution for 1 year, then you become eligible for an SIV visa. And I don't know if there is anyone here who came on an SIV visa, which is just great. There are people who are concerned that having worked with certain institutions, they might be targeted for attacks. And there are quite a few people that left in 2016, 17, 18. But among them, there were a few families that I knew, and usually it was the husband who wanted to come to America. And the wife was quite happy in Afghanistan, but anyway, they would go with the children. And what makes me feel very good is that there are a few of them that are returning. And they're returning because they know that now is a moment of opportunity in Afghanistan. Now it's like the time is like zero. This is where development is going to start. This is where if you have a good idea and you start a business, you might become very powerful, very wealthy in 10 years. This is really a moment of opportunity. And when they come back, I really welcome them. So I hope one day I'll be able to welcome all the Afghans that are here. Afghanistan is going to become a beautiful country, and it needs the help of every Afghan. And just know that this is your country too, and that we will be very happy to have you back. Thank you.
Thank you so much for once again joining us here at the U.S. Institute of Peace. Thank you for bringing your perspective, your wisdom, and your heart to an important conversation at an important time. One more round of thank you for First Lady. And thank you, everyone, for joining us.